The airport was full of people rushing to their gates, voices mixing with the sound of rolling bags and flight announcements echoing across the hall. Maya Johnson stood near the first-class counter, calm and elegant, dressed in a dark blue business suit that matched her confident eyes. She had just finished a long business trip that had taken her across 3 cities in 1 week. Her small company had finally signed a huge contract, and for the first time in months, she felt proud. She wasn't born into wealth. Everything she owned was built from long nights, rejections, and faith in her dream. As she waited in line, she looked around. The passengers in first class were relaxed, holding expensive coffee cups. Talking about markets and stocks, Maya smiled slightly, thinking about how she used to serve coffee to people like them when she was younger. She had always promised herself that one day she would be on the other side of that counter, not serving but flying when her turn came. She stepped forward and handed her ticket to the gate attendant. The woman behind the counter looked at Maya, then at the ticket. Her smile disappeared. Her eyes scanned Maya's clothes, her brown skin, her calm face, and then she said in a sharp tone, "I'm sorry, ma'am. This seat is for first class only." Maya blinked, thinking she had misheard. "Yes," she said softly. "This is a first-class ticket." The woman frowned and typed something into her computer. "There must be some mistake," she said without looking up. "Economy boarding is over there," and pointed toward the other line. A few people nearby began whispering. Maya could feel their eyes on her. She stayed polite. "Please check again," she said gently. "The ticket was booked by my assistant yesterday." The attendant sighed, rolling her eyes. "Ma'am, this ticket looks suspicious," she muttered. "Please step aside while I confirm." Maya's fingers tightened around her bag, but she didn't raise her voice. She had been through worse. She had been ignored in meetings, spoken over, doubted by investors. But this moment, this public humiliation cut deeper. Not because she was denied a seat, but because it reminded her that success still didn't protect her from judgment. The man behind her cleared his throat impatiently. "Some people just try to sneak upgrades," he whispered to his wife. Loud enough for Maya to hear. The woman chuckled. "Happens all the time." The attendant didn't even glance at them. She just called for her supervisor. Her tone was different now, louder. "Security? Can you come to gate 12? Maya looked up, confused. "Security?" she asked quietly. "For what?" The attendant shrugged. "We just need to confirm your identity." Maya stepped back, taking a slow breath. The old anger she thought she had buried years ago began to rise, but she kept her face calm. A security guard approached, tall and stiff. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. The attendant quickly spoke before Maya could. "We just have someone trying to board first class with what looks like a fake ticket." The word fake hung in the air. People turned to look. Phones were lifted. Someone was recording. Maya felt the heat rise behind her eyes, but she didn't break. She opened her purse and took out her passport, her ID, and the digital confirmation on her phone. "Everything is real," she said softly. "Maybe your system has an error." The guard glanced at the screen, clearly unsure what to do. The attendant crossed her arms. "I've worked here for 10 years. I know when something doesn't add up," she said firmly. Maya gave a small, tired smile. "And I've worked for 20, she replied. "I think I know when someone doesn't listen." The guard looked uncomfortable. "Maybe you should step aside for now, ma'am," he said gently. Maya nodded slowly. She stepped back, allowing others to pass. The whispers grew louder. Someone said, "Guess she couldn't afford it after all." Another voice laughed. "Yeah, she looks more like economy than first class." Maya's phone buzzed in her hand. It was her driver asking if everything was fine. She typed back one word: "Wait." Her calmness began to confuse the crowd. She didn't argue, didn't shout. She just stood quietly, eyes fixed on the gate display. Inside her chest, her heart was heavy, but her mind was already clear. She had faced disrespect before and learned one rule: never fight small minds with anger. Instead, she reached into her pocket and opened her business contact list. Her thumb hovered over one name, the name of someone who didn't sit behind a counter, but in a boardroom, the CEO of the airline itself. As the attendant waved the next passenger through, she looked back at Maya with a satisfied smirk. "You can wait over there." "Ma'am," she said coldly. Maya gave a polite nod. "Thank you," she said, turning away. She walked toward the large window overlooking the runway. The setting sun reflected off the glass, lighting her face in gold. Her reflection looked calm, but inside her a storm had started. She whispered softly to herself. One phone call, the same line she used whenever someone underestimated her. Around her, life moved on. Planes landed and took off, announcements echoed. But for Maya, time had slowed. She was remembering the young woman who used to dream of flying. The one who once couldn't even afford a bus ticket. Now she owned an empire, and yet someone still looked at her and saw less. She took a breath, smiled faintly, and tapped the screen. The call connected. Her voice was soft, steady and unshaken. "Good evening," she said. "It's Maya Johnson. Tell Mr. Reynolds I need to discuss an urgent issue about his airline." The attendant didn't hear her. The people around didn't notice the shift. But at that moment, the balance of power quietly changed. The woman they had dismissed was about to remind the entire airline who she really was. And it all began right there. At the gate, with one glance and one wrong assumption, the crowd had already moved on. But the air around Maya still felt heavy. Her heart beat slowly. Not with fear, but with something colder. Disbelief mixed with quiet anger. She stood near the window, staring at the planes lined up outside. Her reflection calm and unreadable. Everyone thought the scene was over, that the woman who was put in her place had accepted defeat. But Maya Johnson wasn't built to bow down. She was built to rise. And she always rose higher after being pushed down. The phone in her hand buzzed again. This time from her assistant. "Ma'am, did you board?" The message read. Maya typed back, "Not yet," but her fingers hesitated before she sent it. Her assistant would worry. But this moment wasn't for pity. It was for clarity. She looked back at the gate counter where the attendant laughed softly with another worker. Shaking her head like she had done the world a favor, Maya smiled faintly. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was a warning of a storm. The kind that doesn't roar. It arrives silently and destroys everything in its path. She took a slow breath and opened her contact list again. At the top was a name, Richard Reynolds, CEO of SkyNova Airlines. She had spoken to him only twice. Once when her company signed a logistics contract with SkyNova for transporting industrial equipment across continents, and once more during a charity dinner where he had personally thanked her for her partnership. That night he had said, "You're one of our most valuable partners, Maya." And tonight, his airline had just insulted her at the boarding gate. Maya pressed the call button. Her voice was steady when the line connected.
"Good evening, this is Maya Johnson," she said softly.
"I need to speak with Mr. Reynolds immediately. It's about your staff at Gate 12. First class boarding?" The woman on the line paused, her tone instantly respectful. "Of course, Ms. Johnson. Please hold a moment." While the call was transferring, Maya turned her gaze to the passengers boarding the plane. The man who had whispered insults earlier now avoided her eyes. Pretending to look at his watch, his wife shifted uncomfortably, realizing maybe they had misjudged the wrong person. But Maya didn't look at them long. Her focus was sharper, colder. The line clicked, and a familiar voice came through. "Maya, what a surprise, how are you?" Richard sounded cheerful, unaware. "Richard," Maya replied politely. "I wish I was calling for a friendly reason." There was a pause, then a shift in tone. "What happened?" he asked. Maya explained everything in a calm, professional tone. She didn't raise her voice or add emotion. She just told him the facts, the denial, the accusation, the humiliation. "Your staff," she said slowly, "called security on me in front of other passengers. They said my ticket was fake, and I should go to economy." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. "They what?" Richard's voice sharpened. "Where are you right now?" "Still at the gate," Maya replied. "Gate 12. Your staff is still boarding passengers. I thought you should know before I take any further steps." Richard exhaled hard. "Stay there, Maya, don't leave. I'll fix this right now," he said quickly. "I'll have my regional director call you within 5 minutes." Maya smiled slightly. "Thank you, Richard," she said calmly. "And just for clarity, I won't be boarding. Not tonight." Before he could answer, she ended the call across the gate. The same attendant noticed Maya still standing near the window. Phone in hand, she whispered to her coworker, "She's probably calling her husband or something." They both laughed again, unaware of what was coming. Minutes later, 3 airline officials rushed toward the gate. One of them was the airport's senior operations manager, his face pale and tense. "Where is Ms. Johnson?" he asked quickly. The attendant blinked, confused. "Who?" she asked. The woman you just denied boarding, he snapped. She pointed hesitantly. Her? She said. That's her? The manager's voice dropped. Do you have any idea who she is? He whispered harshly. She's the CEO of MJ Global Logistics, one of our largest partners. The attendant's face drained of color. I didn't know, she stammered. She didn't look. She stopped herself. Realizing the mistake in her own words, Maya turned as the manager approached. His voice was full of apology. Ms. Johnson, please accept our deepest apologies for this terrible misunderstanding, he said hurriedly. The staff member will be dealt with immediately. And you are welcome to board now. Maya looked at him calmly. Thank you, but I won't, she said softly. You already showed me what kind of service first class means here. Her tone was even. Polite, but her words hit like thunder. The manager froze, unable to respond. Maya picked up her bag, her steps slow, graceful, powerful. The crowd that once whispered now fell silent, watching her walk past. Her heels clicked against the floor like echoes of justice. Outside, she called her driver. Pick me up, she said quietly. Then made one more call, this time to her head of operations. And all Skynova contracts, she instructed. And move our logistics to Northern Jet. The man on the line didn't ask why, he just said, right away, ma'am. Maya ended the call and leaned back in her seat as her car drove away from the terminal. The city lights reflected in her eyes. Calm but fierce, she wasn't angry anymore. She was reminded of something she had learned long ago. Respect isn't asked for. It's earned by showing who you truly are when others try to belittle you. And that night, in a matter of minutes, an airline would learn what it meant to underestimate the wrong woman, the wrong entrepreneur, and the calmest storm they would ever face. The night outside the airport was cold and clear, the runway lights glowing like tiny stars across the ground. Maya sat quietly in the back seat of her black car, her phone resting on her lap. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't angry. She was thinking, calculating, and remembering. Every time life had tried to humiliate her, she had learned to answer with action, not emotion, and tonight would be no different. Her phone vibrated again, this time with a message from the CEO himself. Maya, I just spoke with the director. We are handling this immediately, please. Tell me what you need. She looked at the message for a long moment before typing a reply. You'll hear from my team in the morning. That was all she wrote. Short and final. Then she put the phone away and stared out the window. The airport behind her was glowing with glass and steel. But to her, it already looked like a sinking ship. The car drove through the city lights, and with every passing block, Maya's calm expression returned. Her driver glanced at her in the mirror. Ma'am, you okay? He asked softly. Perfectly fine, she said with a small smile. Just another lesson. When she reached her home office, she didn't take off her heels or her jacket. She walked straight to her desk, turned on the big monitor, and opened her company's communication system. A single message to her senior legal advisor. Activate the contract termination clause for Skynova, she wrote. Effective immediately, the advisor called within seconds. His voice serious. Is everything all right, Ms. Johnson? It will be, she replied, by morning across the city. The corporate headquarters of Skynova Airlines was already in chaos. Richard Reynolds, the CEO, had returned to his office after midnight. Still on the phone with his regional team. You told me this is a misunderstanding, he said sharply. Do you realize who she is? The voice on the other end stammered. We do, sir, we are handling it. Richard slammed his pen on the table. Handling it? She controls nearly 40% of our logistics operations. If she pulls her contracts, we'll lose millions before sunrise. Meanwhile, Maya was reviewing emails from other partners. She opened one labeled Pending Renewal Northern Jet Alliance. She smiled. Looks like they'll be happy tonight, she said quietly. She typed quickly. Confirm new route agreements. Prioritize immediate switch, her assistant, still awake, sent a worried message. Ma'am, are you sure you want to cut Skynova? They're one of our biggest. Maya interrupted her with a voice note. Her tone soft but unshakable. No one is big enough to disrespect people and keep business. We build alliances, not chains. By 2 a.m., a single press release went out from MJ Global Logistics. It was polite, professional, but sharp enough to make headlines. It read, effective immediately, MJ Global Logistics has suspended all partnerships with Skynova Airlines due to an incident involving unacceptable treatment of a client at the executive level. We remain committed to working only with companies that value equality and respect. The news spread fast. Within hours, reporters began calling Sky Nova's offices. Social media exploded with posts about the airline that humiliated its own partner. Hashtags like Jar MJ Global and Sky Nova Down started trending. In the morning, Maya's phone buzzed again. Dozens of missed calls, some from journalists, some from business friends. One even from a government representative offering public support. She ignored them all, instead scrolling through the morning news feed. A headline caught her eye. Top airline faces backlash after discrimination scandal. CEO responds to partner fallout. She took a sip of coffee. Calm and focused, her assistant entered the room. Wide-eyed, "Ma'am, Sky Nova's shares dropped 7% overnight." Maya looked up. "They'll recover," she said simply, "but they'll never forget." Her assistant hesitated. "Do you want to issue a public statement?" Maya shook her head. "No, silence is stronger. They'll talk. And I'll work." Across the city, the airline headquarters was in full panic. Emergency meetings were called, lawyers discussed damage control, and executives argued over who should take the blame. The same regional manager who had spoken to the gate staff was now red-faced, saying, "I swear I didn't know who she was." Richard's voice was cold. You didn't have to know her name to treat her like a human being. By evening, Sky Nova released an official apology on all their platforms. But Maya didn't read it. She was in another meeting, signing her new partnership deal with Northern Jet. When her assistant congratulated her, she smiled. "No need to thank me," she said softly. "Just thank them for teaching us how to choose our partners better." Outside, the sky turned golden as the sun began to set, the same kind of light that had touched her face through the airport glass hours ago. She remembered standing there silent and calm while others mocked her, and now, less than a day later, those same people were probably watching the news, realizing they had witnessed a moment that changed everything. Maya closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. Her eyes were soft but sharp, calm but commanding. "One phone call," she whispered again. That's all it ever takes, and in that quiet moment, she wasn't thinking about revenge or fame. She was thinking about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Every person who had swallowed their anger just to stay professional. She hoped her silence would speak for them too, louder than any shout could, because when dignity meets power, even the biggest airlines can fall from the sky. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass windows of Sky Nova Airlines headquarters, but no one inside felt warmth. The mood was tense, phones rang nonstop, and screens flashed with urgent emails. Every executive in the building knew what had happened overnight. The incident with Maya Johnson wasn't just a complaint anymore. It had become a corporate nightmare. Inside the boardroom, Richard Reynolds stood near the window, phone in hand, staring down at the endless feed of notifications. "Public relations is calling this a social media storm," one advisor said nervously. "We've lost 3 major partners this morning alone." Richard didn't respond. His jaw was tight, his voice quiet. "Find the footage from the airport," he said. Now, at the airport, the morning shift was quiet. The same gate that had been full of noise and laughter now carried an uneasy silence. The attendant from the previous night, Clara, sat in the break room with her head in her hands. The supervisor entered with a printed letter. "You've been placed on immediate leave pending investigation," he said without emotion. Clara looked up, her face pale. "It was a misunderstanding," she whispered. She stopped herself, realizing words wouldn't save her now. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her office with a cup of tea. The world outside her window moved calmly, as if nothing had changed, but her name was now trending everywhere. Her assistant entered the room holding a tablet. "Ma'am, you've been invited to speak at the Global Women in Business Summit next week," she said. "They want you to talk about professionalism and respect in corporate spaces." Maya smiled softly. "Interesting timing," she said. "Tell them I'll think about it." Her phone rang again. It was Richard Reynolds. She let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was calm, professional. "Good morning." "Richard," she said. "I see your team handled things quickly." Richard sighed. "Maya, I can't express how sorry I am. I had no idea something like this could happen. The staff involved will be disciplined, and we're reviewing our entire protocol." Maya listened quietly, then asked, "Do you think a protocol would have stopped the way she looked at me?" Richard hesitated. "I suppose not," he admitted. Maya's tone stayed steady. "That's the point. It's not about systems, it's about people. You can replace employees, but not culture. Richard's voice grew smaller. What can we do to make this right? Maya thought for a moment before replying. Nothing, she said softly. You already made it right. When you showed me who you are and who I should never work with again. Then she thanked him for his time and ended the call. In the boardroom, Richard placed his phone down slowly. She's not coming back, he said quietly. Not ever. The room fell silent. A younger executive whispered, Do you think she'll sue? Richard shook his head. She doesn't need to, he said. She already took everything that matters, our reputation. That afternoon, news channels ran headlines like Businesswoman Ends Major Airline Contract Over Discrimination Scandal. Interviews with activists and industry leaders began flooding the airwaves. This isn't just about one woman, one commentator said. It's about how easily power blinds people to basic respect. Maya's friends and followers sent messages of support. But she didn't bask in the attention. She knew how fast the world moved from outrage to distraction. Instead, she sat by her window, writing a short message to her staff. Pride is not arrogance, dignity is not ego. Remember that when you face the world. She hit send and closed her laptop. Later that evening, her assistant brought her the newspaper. On the front page was her photo, the same one the cameras had caught at the airport, standing quietly by the window. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, and under it was the headline, The Woman Who Brought Down an Airline Without Saying a Word. Maya looked at it for a moment, then folded the paper neatly. They exaggerate, she said with a smile. I didn't bring anything down. I just stood up at that same moment across town. Clara sat alone in her small apartment, staring at her phone. The videos of the incident were everywhere. The comments were brutal, racist, disrespectful, shameful. She scrolled through them with trembling hands, realizing her laughter from last night was now the reason for her downfall. The airline's public relations team was in damage control mode. We'll issue a diversity statement, one intern suggested. A video apology from the CEO, another added. Richard cut them off. No more statements, he said firmly. They don't fix hearts, they just fill headlines. By nightfall, the noise began to fade, but the lesson didn't for Maya. The day ended the way it had begun. In silence, she didn't need applause or revenge. Her peace was louder than their excuses. She stepped out onto her balcony, the city light stretching below her. In that quiet moment, she thought of every person who had ever faced judgment for how they looked, where they came from, or what others assumed about them. She whispered softly, One day they'll learn. And somewhere across the world, someone watching her story would learn that too. Sometimes change doesn't need anger. It just needs one calm soul brave enough to stand in the storm and never bow their head. The next morning, the world felt strangely still. Yet under that quiet, something powerful was shifting. Maya sat in her office early, sunlight reflecting off the glass walls of her building. Her assistant entered quietly, holding a stack of printed articles. Ma'am, the story's everywhere, she said, placing them on the desk. Headlines screamed across the pages. Airline faces fallout after discrimination incident, and CEO of MJ Global ends Skynova contract overnight. Maya didn't smile. She didn't feel joy from revenge, only the calm satisfaction of a storm that had passed. She reached for her coffee and whispered. They finally learned the value of silence. Across town, chaos ruled Skynova headquarters. The boardroom was packed, the tension thick. Richard Reynolds stood at the head of the table, looking more exhausted than angry. His phone buzzed every few seconds. CNN wants a comment. Sir, one advisor said, BBC too, and there's a trending hashtag calling for a boycott. Richard rubbed his temple. Find her, he said quietly. I need to speak to Maya Johnson in person. But Maya wasn't interested in conversations. She was working on something else, something bigger. Her legal team was drafting a partnership offer for her own aviation branch. She had dreamed of starting 1 year ago, but there had never been a push strong enough. Now she had one. Her company, MJ Global Logistics, already controlled land and sea shipping soon. It would take to the skies and without needing Skynova. Meanwhile, the gate attendant, Clara, sat in a cold meeting room at the airport's HR office. Her supervisor read her the final words she didn't want to hear. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Clara tried to speak. I didn't mean to. But the supervisor cut her off. Intent doesn't erase impact, he said simply. She walked out quietly, tears in her eyes. The same gate she had once controlled now felt like a memory of shame. Back at MJ Global, Maya's team gathered in the conference room. Our shares have risen 5%, her financial advisor said. Northern Jet officially confirmed the partnership this morning. It's the fastest contract execution in company history. Maya nodded. Good, she said. Let's send a thank you gift to their team. Gratitude always opens more doors. Her assistant hesitated before speaking. Ma'am? Skynova sent another apology, a personal letter from Richard himself. Maya took the letter but didn't open it. Archive it, she said calmly. I prefer actions over apologies. Later that evening, the airline finally made a public announcement. Their official spokesperson stood before the cameras, voice shaking slightly. Skynova Airlines takes full responsibility for the discriminatory behavior shown toward Ms. Maya Johnson. We apologize for the incident and have taken immediate corrective measures. As the cameras flashed, the world already knew it was too late. The internet had decided. And in the digital age, reputation was currency. Maya's name now symbolized strength, composure, and justice without shouting. In her office, she watched the broadcast in silence. Her friend and fellow entrepreneur Daniel called her. You made history, Maya, he said. You didn't just end a partnership. You changed how people see power. Maya smiled faintly. History doesn't care about who screams, she replied. It remembers who stays standing. The night grew quiet again, but the world wasn't the same. News anchors called her the Silent Storm. Business blogs called her the woman who grounded Skynova. And young entrepreneurs around the world shared her story with the caption, Grace under fire is the ultimate strength. Before heading home, Maya stood by her office window, the city lights glowing below. She remembered that moment at the gate, the laughter, the whispers, the humiliation, and how easily people judge what they don't understand, and yet from that same moment, she had built something greater, a message that traveled farther than any plane could fly. She whispered to herself, They tried to deny my seat, and I built my own airline. The clock struck midnight. But for Maya Johnson, a new chapter had just taken flight. The world had seen her calm, her power, her silence, and learned that true revenge doesn't need fire, only focus. The days that followed felt unreal to everyone but Maya. For her, life moved on in its usual rhythm. Calm mornings, quiet coffee and clear plans, but outside her office, the world couldn't stop talking. Her face was on magazine covers. Headlines praised her composure, and business networks called her the woman who redefined power. Yet Maya didn't chase fame. She never wanted revenge. What she always wanted, was respect. Across the city, Skynova Airlines was still in damage control. The once proud company now struggled to recover its image. Investors were nervous, partners were leaving, and the board demanded answers. Richard Reynolds sat alone in his office, watching a live interview of Maya on a business channel. She was dressed simply, her voice calm. It was never about money, she told the interviewer. It was about being seen, being respected, being treated as human. Richard sighed deeply. He knew her words would echo longer than any press release could. Meanwhile, in Maya's company, there was a quiet celebration. Her employees admired her not just as their boss, but as a symbol of dignity. A young intern approached her hesitantly. Ma'am, she said softly, because of you, my mother finally told her boss to stop treating her unfairly. Maya smiled gently. Good, she replied, that's the real victory. At the same time, something unexpected began happening. Messages flooded Maya's inbox, not from journalists, but from ordinary travelers. People who had faced similar humiliation at airports. A single mother who was forced to give up her seat. A man denied service because of his accent. A student laughed at for wearing old clothes. All of them wrote the same thing. Your story gave me courage. Maya read every message. Some made her smile, others made her eyes sting. She realized that what began as an insult had become an awakening. Her silence had turned into a voice for thousands who never had one. The following week, she was invited to speak at the Global Women in Business Summit. This time she accepted when she walked onto the stage. The hall erupted in applause, but she raised her hand gently, asking for quiet. Please, she said, let me speak in peace. The audience laughed softly. Already captivated, she began. A few days ago, someone told me I didn't belong in first class. I didn't argue, I didn't shout. I just made one call. The crowd leaned in. That call wasn't about revenge. It was about responsibility. When we allow disrespect once, we teach people that silence means approval. She paused, letting her words sink in. Respect, she continued, is not bought by titles or money. It's earned by how we treat others even when no one is watching. The audience clapped, not out of habit but from genuine admiration. Her story had already spread, but hearing it in her own voice felt like truth being spoken aloud. After the speech, a journalist asked her backstage, "Ms. Johnson, do you think Skynova deserved what happened?" Maya looked at him thoughtfully. "Deserved is a heavy word," she said softly. "I think they received what they gave, a reflection of their own actions." That night, as she rode home, her driver said, "Ma'am, my daughter watched your speech on her phone. She said she wants to be like you." Maya chuckled. "Tell her she already can be," she said. "All she needs is courage and calm." The car passed by the airport. The same one where it all began. Maya looked at the glowing gates in the distance. It looked smaller now, ordinary, almost powerless. She thought of the woman at the counter, Clara, and wondered what had become of her. For a moment she hoped that Clara had learned something too, something about kindness. Maya's phone buzzed. It was a new message from an unknown number. She opened it. The message read, "Ms. Johnson, I was the attendant from that night. I lost my job. But I also learned a lesson I'll never forget. I'm sorry. And I thank you for teaching me through grace, not hate." Maya stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed only 3 words in reply. "Learn, then rise." As the city lights blurred past her window, she leaned back, feeling peace settle over her heart. She realized that true justice wasn't destroying someone. It was helping them see, and maybe in some strange way, that was her greatest victory. By the time she reached home, the sky was painted deep blue. The world saw her as a symbol, a storm, a legend. But Maya knew she was just a woman who refused to be silent when silence meant surrender. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, "Power isn't noise. It's grace under fire." And somewhere in the distance, a plane roared into the night sky. The same kind she once boarded. But this time it flew carrying her name on the cargo tail, MJ Global Air. A new empire born from dignity, silence, and unshakable strength. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the skyline of the city. Inside her new headquarters, Maya Johnson stood before a large window, the MJ Global Air logo shining proudly behind her. It had been months since the airport incident, yet its echo still rippled through the world. What started as humiliation had turned into transformation, and the woman they once laughed at had become a legend of quiet strength. Her aviation division was now fully operational. Sleek silver planes carrying her company's name across continents. The very same airline that once denied her, now struggled to fill seats. Their first-class cabins were emptier than ever. The world hadn't boycotted them by force. It had simply chosen to fly with integrity. Maya sipped her coffee, reading the morning news on her tablet. The headline read, "MJ Global Air reaches record growth in first quarter." Below it, another story caught her eye. Former Skynova employee starts diversity initiative. Inspired by Maya Johnson, her lips curved into a small smile. It was Clara, the attendant who had once humiliated her. She was now leading programs that trained airline staff in equality and empathy. Maya whispered softly, "Good for you." And for the first time, she felt no trace of anger, only peace. Later that day, Maya arrived at the airport for her own flight, not as a passenger being questioned, but as the founder whose planes ruled the skies. Cameras flashed as reporters surrounded her. "Ms. Johnson, how does it feel to own the skies that once denied you?" one of them asked. Maya paused, looking toward the runway where one of her jets was preparing for takeoff. "It feels," she said quietly, "like forgiveness with wings." She boarded her private jet, greeted warmly by her all-female crew. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Johnson," the captain said with pride. Maya smiled. "It's good to be home," she replied. The engines hummed and the aircraft lifted into the clouds. The city below grew smaller and smaller, just like the memory of that cruel night. As the plane soared higher, Maya opened her notebook and began writing a letter, not to a corporation, not to a CEO, but to her younger self. "Dear Maya," she wrote, "there will be days when the world won't see your worth, when people will laugh, doubt and belittle you, don't shout back. Don't crumble, stand tall. And let your silence speak, because one day, the same world will have no choice but to listen. She closed the notebook. Her heart calm and full. The seat beside her was empty. But she imagined the presence of every woman, every man, every dreamer who had ever been told they didn't belong. They were all flying with her in spirit. Carried by the wind of her story far below, Skynova Airlines had begun a long process of rebuilding. Their new motto read, "Respect takes flight." Inspired by the very woman they once denied, their CEO Richard Reynolds had retired quietly, leaving behind a letter addressed to Maya. Thanking her for showing him the cost of arrogance, she never replied. But she kept the letter in her office drawer as a reminder that even mistakes can turn into change. When her jet broke through the clouds, sunlight flooded the cabin. Maya closed her eyes and smiled. The world no longer saw her as the black entrepreneur denied boarding. They saw her as the woman who turned pain into purpose. Her assistant, seated nearby, asked softly, "Ma'am, what's next for you?" Maya looked out the window at the endless blue and said, "We keep flying higher, not to prove them wrong, but to prove ourselves right." The plane continued its climb, slicing through clouds with quiet power. Below it, the earth stretched wide, alive, and full of stories yet untold, and as Maya looked down, she whispered, "They denied me a seat in first class, so I built my own sky." The engines roared softly, steady as her heart, and somewhere, the universe seemed to nod in agreement. Because grace, once tested, always finds its wings.